The void beyond the Andromeda Rift was more than empty space. It was a maw of silence, swallowing starships and dreams alike. Ancient explorers had charted its boundaries centuries ago, naming sectors after the lost expeditions that never returned. The Halvorsen debris field, the Marin's ghost, the Soradel abyss. No beacon blinked through its darkness, and no friendly warp gate linked to its expanse. It was, for all intents and purposes, a cosmic graveyard. Yet it was here, on the edge of the uncharted, that the United Systems of the Solarian Alliance opted to unveil its greatest secret. Hidden in orbital docks carved from the dead shell of a gas giant, the USS Blackstar lay cocooned in stealth garnet hull sections and shadowed hangars. At first glance, she seemed no different from any other dreadnought, but appearances, as they often do, betrayed nothing of the monstrous power coiled within. Captain Anya Reyes studied the immense warship on her viewscreen, every swish of her sleek black uniform echoing with the weight of her command. She remembered the first time she'd walked her length, when her boots had thudded hollowly against the reinforced catwalks. 3 kilometers from prow to stern, the Blackstar felt less like a vessel and more like a floating fortress. Her spaced armor layers were laced with reactive polymers capable of withstanding plasma storms. Her battery of quantum railguns bristled beneath armored shutters, each carriage capable of launching projectiles with gravitic compression so intense they could splice a planet's crust apart. But raw firepower alone would not make the difference. Hidden compartments along the keel housed the gravitic coil assembly, an experimental slipstream drive that bent spacetime around the ship, letting her slip between distant points in an instant. It was a gamble unproven, unstable, but if it worked, no Dominion raider or cyborg dreadnought could outrun her. And if the rumors were true, she was to lead the vanguard against the Shaikara Dominion, an empire of cybernetic warlords whose armies had overrun more than a dozen systems in the last cycle. A rumble of footsteps drew Reyes from her reverie. Commander Ismail Ilyas Rahim entered, his service jacket unbuttoned at the collar, dark curls catching stray lights. "Captain," he began, voice low, "senior staff are assembled. They await your briefing in conference room A. Hank." "You, Commander." Reyes offered a brief nod before turning her gaze back to the dark silhouette of the Blackstar. She sensed, rather than saw, the creeping tension on her back bridge, a tight coil of anticipation mixed with fear. Many of these officers had fought in skirmishes across the outer colonies. None had ever faced an opponent like the Shaikara. None had yet glimpsed what the Blackstar could do out the conference room's transparent dome. Roof revealed a canopy of smeared nebulae, beyond purple tendrils of charged gas and flakes of red dwarf stardust drifting in the void. Under that cosmic tapestry, the senior staff sat at the holotable, glowing schematics hovering above its center like futuristic runes. Lieutenant Commander Sylvia Chun, tactical officer, tapped her datapad. "Sector 94 Gamma lies 10 parsecs ahead, Captain. The Dominion raid fleet has been blockading the Helios colony for 16 hours. Their objective seems twofold: suppress planetary defenses and use the colony's industrial grids for ship refitting." "Losses on Helios are unacceptable," Rice replied. "We cannot allow the Shaikara to galvanize their foothold there." Chief Engineer Rowan Malik frowned. "Slipstream drive is on schedule, but still untested under combat conditions. The gravitic coils need calibration after every full charge cycle, or we risk catastrophic field collapse." Reyes leaned forward. "How long to complete calibration post-jump?" 2 hours minimum," Malik answered. "Unless we take the drive. Offline immediately after exit, but that exposes us to incoming fire." A hush fell over the table. The choice was clear: either emerge defenseless into a swarm of Dominion destroyers, or delay action and risk the colony's destruction. Dr. Lei Han, The ship's chief scientist spoke softly. Our quantum railguns alone can punch holes through cruiser-class hulls at point-blank range. If we emerge at maximum firing solution, we could neutralize the blockade before they even know what hit them. Her fingers caressed the holoschematic of the Blackstar's gun arrays. But we'll need to run the engines at only 30% to prevent recoil feedback from the drive coils. Reyes closed her eyes for a heartbeat and made her decision. We go in hot, she ordered. Full slipstream burn. Emerge 40 kilometers off the primary target. Railguns at 30%. Secondary particle arrays at maximum. Then drop the drive offline full calibration upon completing the strike. She let silence settle, watching the faces around her. Questions? Silence. Every officer knew the stakes. Failure meant the colony's fall. Success would mark the first true test of Solarian ingenuity against the Shy-Kara scourge dot in the corridor outside. Lieutenant Rena Volkov ran a final diagnostic on the bridge comes array. Her pale eyes flicked over lines of code cascading up. Her holodisplay. Bridge to engineering. Slipstream field stability test at 97.6%. Minor phase variance detected. Recommend feedback dampeners online immediately post-jump. Copy that, Volkov, Chief Engineer Malik responded. Dampeners engage on my mark. Volkov's fingers danced faster. Mark, the corridor. Shook as the gravitic coils engaged deep, resonant thunder through steel and supercomposite. Crew members braced, glancing at one another with nervous excitement. Few had ever felt the slipstream's roar from inside the hull. Down in the launch bays. Drone craft and fighter wings were scrambled as a precaution. But true to protocol, the hangar doors remained sealed. The Blackstar would stand or fall on her own power. Back on the bridge, the slipstream horizon flickered, folding space in fractal arcs of blue-white light. The stars outstretched into filaments as the void contorted around them. Lieutenant Chun's voice cut through the roar. Slipstream field stabilized, calculating exit coordinates now. In an instant, the vessel lurched, the shimmering trickle of slipstream collapsing, and the nebula outside snapped back into focus. Gingerly at first, then with brutal clarity, the crew saw them. 92 ships of the Shy-Kara Dominion encircling Helios colony. A panorama of dreadnoughts, frigates, and missile corvettes, each hull marked with the obsidian sigil of the Yaw. Cyborg warlords. Shield flares bloomed across the blockade line like dark flowers, weapon batteries charging in ominous spurts. Chun's fingers flew over her console. Targeting solution ready. Distance 40 kilometers. All weapons green. Railguns at 30% charge. Reyes straightened, voice sharp as a blade. Fire. The Blackstar's forward deck rocked under the feedback as quantum railguns unleashed their payload. Projectiles metallic slugs compressed to near singularity hurtled forward, tearing holes in cruiser armor as if slicing through air. First Dominion vessel erupted in a cascade of plasma and debris. Swaths of enemy ships turned, unleashing arrays of plasma bolts and Takan missiles. The bridge lit up with alarms. Incoming ordnance. Shouted Volkov. Evasive maneuvers, Rees snapped. The Blackstar swerved with surprising agility for her size, thrusters bellowing as the shields flared to life. But the primary target was Priority 1, the Ver-Cathal Prime, flagship of the blockading squadron. Chun adjusted fire controls. Secondary arrays online, firing ionized particle stream. A torrent of incandescent energy washed over the Dominion flagship, overloading its reactors. The Ver-Cathal Prime staggered, then blossomed into a supernova of metal and flame. Shockwaves radiated outward. 2 escort frigates evaporated in the blast. Cheers thundered across the bridge, but Reyes held up a hand. Defensive posture. Boarding shuttles inbound. Sensors crowded with new contacts, the Shy-Kara always. pressed the advantage, sending swarms of cyber-enhanced Marines to latch onto enemy hulls. But the Blackstar's point defense lasers bloomed into action, dozens of crimson lances searing shredded shuttles into scrap. Boarding nullifier grid active, Dr. Hone announced, crowd control field holding. Reyes let the tension drain from her shoulders for the first time. They had done it. In a single devastating strike, the Blackstar had shattered the blockade. The Helios colony's defenses, spooked and scattered, began to rally under Alliance support vessels that slipped in behind the dreadnought. That night, if the hush of a starry void could be called night rays, returned to her quarters. The cabin was Spartan, a slim bunk, a viewport showing distant stars, and a holodisk where encrypted comms awaited. She sat heavily, replaying the day's events on the holoscreen. Reports flooded in. Civilian transmissions of relief. Alliance. Admirals drafting commendations, and frantic Shukara communiques, ordering retreats. But triumph tasted hollow. Reyes thought of the faces of her crew young pilots, who'd never fired a real shot in anger. Engineers who'd spent months perfecting the drive that nearly destroyed them all. Scientists betting careers on theoretical physics. They'd earned every scrap of glory, yet she feared what new nightmares they might unleash by pressing this advantage too far. Her datapad chimed. A direct message from Admiral Kessler, Supreme Commander of Fleets. Congratulations. The Blackstar's performance exceeded every expectation. Stand by for further orders. Kessler out. Reyes swallowed. She knew that this was only the first salvo in a war that threatened to engulf the galaxy. The Shy-Kara would not yield easily, and somewhere out there, their hidden fleets prepared retaliatory strikes. The Blackstar, for all her might, was but one piece on a chessboard that stretched across light years. As she gazed at the stars, another feeling stirred. Purpose. Humanity had grown complacent, edged by internal politics and petty disputes. Now, united by the threat of the Dominion, they stood at the brink of a new era, one where the frontier would no longer be forgotten, and those daring enough to reach. Beyond would define the fate of countless souls. Captain Reyes tapped her comm unit. Bridge, this is Reyes. Prepare for transit to Sector 123 Theta. We resume course tomorrow at 0600 hours. I expect full battle readiness. Aye, Captain, came the chorus of responses. She turned off the holoscreen. Lights dimmed. The Blackstar, her engine still humming with residual energy, drifted through the silent black. And in that profound solitude, a single truth resonated across the metallic hull. They had awakened a sleeping giant, and nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk. The blindness of slipstream exit gave way to the brutal clarity of real space. Where? The USS Blackstar hung like a dark monolith amidst the shattered remnants of the Shy-Kara blockade. Metal carcasses drifted past the prow windows, destroyed destroyers, shattered frigate hulls, and burnt-out missile corvettes, all remnants of the Blackstar's opening salvo. Plasma bloom and ionized gas trailed behind her like funeral pyres, painting the void in spectral reds and purples. On the bridge, the hum of revived systems echoed through the steel decking. Ensign Tai Nakamura, fresh-faced and eager, manned the targeting consoles. All hands, report status, Captain Reyes commanded. Primary railguns at 20% power. Captain. Lieutenant Commander Chun replied without taking her eyes from the holotable. Secondary particle beams at full charge. Point defense. Lasers reloaded and standing by. Slipstream drive in cooldown sequence. Chief Engineer Malik reported. ETA to full calibration. 90 minutes. A murmur spread through the bridge crew as the enormity of their situation settled in. The Blackstar's vengeance had been swift, but retribution would not come without cost. They had no way of knowing whether any Dominion survivors remained. In the region, hostile fighters could be cloaked, Boarding drones could lie hidden in shrouded coves of the superstructure. The silence that followed their assault was as menacing as the fight itself. Helios Colony Command reports minimal civilian casualties, Lieutenant Volkov said, her voice tense with relief. Their planetary shield matrix held just long, enough for Alliance relief vessels to evacuate critical personnel. Reyes allowed herself the briefest nod. Good. Relay orders. Begin planetary restoration protocols. Supply relief convoys with our shuttles. Keep shield drones in orbit until the system stabilizes. Below decks, the colony's distress beacon blazed. Once the warships of the Alliance had finished what the Blackstar began, they would help rebuild. But these small victories only underscored the larger conflict still unfolding. The hunter becomes the hunted moments later. The sensors flickered. Nuanced readings appeared at the edge of detection. A swarm of Shi'Ikara remnant fighters, ducking in from the fringes of the Helios systems. Asteroid belts. Less than 40 ships, but each was a cybernetically enhanced ace pilot lethal, precise and driven by vengeance. Incoming fighters vectoring at 4 Alpha approach, Sean announced. Estimate closure in 20 seconds. Battle stations. Reyes snapped. Launch Wing 1 and 2 escort the colony shuttles out of range. Railguns on standby for capital defense. Point defense engage anything that breaches 30 kilometers. On either side of the Blackstar's hull, thunderous. Shutters rippled as the hangar bays opened. Squadrons of sleek, arrowhead-shaped fighters threw themselves into space, engines flaring white-hot in salute. These were the Blackstar's Shadows Fast, maneuverable craft carrying miniature pulse cannons and smart munitions, each piloted by veterans of skirmishes along the rim. Lieutenant Jacques Calder piloted the lead Avenger-class interceptor. Through the viewscreen, he saw the enemy jag in formation, their hull plating modeled with salvaged parts and jury-rigged enhancements. They think they can ambush us in the rocks, he muttered over comms. Let's remind them what happens when you underestimate Alliance pilots. Roger that, his co-pilot, Lieutenant Ambassador's daughter, Seraphine Cruz, quipped. Time to carve star-shaped holes in their overconfidence. With a burst of accelerative G-thrust, the Avengers flashed forward. Pulse cannons ignited in twin beams, lancing across the void. Explosions turned into fireworks as Shikara fighters burst apart, their pilot bio-integrations frying mid-breath. Calder wove through wreckage, lock-tracking a surviving enemy. Ace, and tightened his missile's targeting parameters. Take point, he barked. Let's show him why we're called the Blackstar Valkyries. Back on the bridge, Reyes watched the Hollywood feed, a ballet of light and wreckage, of precision maneuvers and fatal flare. Each micro-victory filtered through the Blackstar's sensors, tallying the kills with clinical detachment. Enemy fighters down, 2 more on fire, Chun reported, voice steady. Allied fighters at 65% strength. Reyes leaned forward. Keep it tight. Escort the shuttles clear of orbital range, then return to the Blackstar for a full rearm. But nearly as swift as the Avengers' victory came a new threat. A pulse volley from the remains of a Dominion Raider squadron, long thought dead. Behind a tumbling fragment of an asteroid, a half-dozen missile frigates had lain in ambush. Their launch tubes glowed as they sent volleys of gravitic warheads screaming toward the Blackstar. Missiles inbound, Volkov cried. 2 salvos. Converging. Point defense, Reyes ordered. All batteries, split fire pattern. Lead each other's coverage. Beams of concentrated light sliced into the incoming missiles, detonating warheads in shuddering nova bursts. But for every scrap intercepted, another slipped through. 1 missile arced in from starboard, tearing a line of superheated plasma. Along the hull, sparks cascaded across the deck plates as secondary explosions rattled the ship. Deck 7 flooding. Came an echo from the damaged control console. Hull breach in Sector 105 Gamma. Seal bulkheads immediately, Reyes directed. I want 0 casualties. Marines filtered out into the corridors with portable energy cutters, sealing plating and rerouting coolant lines through spare conduits. Somewhere in the span of steel corridors, the murmur of prayers and expletives mingled. The Dominion's counterstroke, while the skirmish in orbit raged. The Dominion High Command convened within the ruined halls of their flagship, a ghostly shell resurrected by cyber augments. High Lord Koresh, his flesh grafted with titanium plating and nerve actuators, glowered at the command holodisplay. They underestimate our resolve, he snarled, crimson ocular implants glowing. The Blackstar is but one ship. We will erode its allies, cut off its supply lines, and strike again when its shield is down. His chief tactician, the half-human, half-machine Counselor Cathalin, inclined her head. We have data on the slipstream signature. Our engineers can adapt phase distortion mines to disrupt the Blackstar's drive. Interdict her at her weakest shears, and we'll turn her own power against her. Koresh's metal-tipped fingers tapped the display. Prepare the mines. Deploy them at Lagrange points and hidden nebula eddies. And bring me the Valkyrie who bested our fighters. She will test the limits of our conversion vats. Back on the Blackstar, the shuttle wing re-docked. Mechanics and weapons techs swarmed over each fighter, patching cuts, replacing scorched armor, and recalibrating weapon mounts. The Valkyries moved like specters through the hangar, their faces lit by strobing repair lights, bloodied veins, fractured bones. Black-eyed exhaustion, but unbowed, Serafini Cruz limped out of an autodock bay, her legs supported by an exoskeletal brace. Next time, I'm staying on the bridge, she muttered, glancing at the med tech's sympathetic smile. I make a lousy wingman when I can't feel half my foot. Calder clapped her on the shoulder. You did fine. Without you on the comlink, I might have plugged into my own missile. He forced a grin, but his eyes were tired. Let's get some rest. We're going to need it for what comes next. Asterisk the aftermath of fire. As the Blackstar limped through the aftermath, the wreckage of combat trailed behind her, like a surgeon's. Discard. Sister ships, cruisers, carriers, and support tenders converged to salvage what they could of the destroyed enemy fleet. The black hull of the Blackstar itself bore scorch marks and panel fissures, but her might remained unbroken. Captain. Reyes ascended to the upper observation deck, a domed chamber that offered a full sphere view of the cosmos. She stood alone beneath a mosaic of stars, the wreck glow of Helios System's last conflict smudged against the void. The silence of space felt almost reverent yet inside her chest. Her heart beat like a war drum. Commander Ilias joined her, slipping quietly to her side. You did well today, he said softly. We all did. Reyes didn't respond immediately. She gazed at the nebula, its luminescent tendrils drifting in slow motion. I keep replaying it, she confessed. The moment we opened up on them, it was too easy, too clean. We hadn't taken a single life outside of combatants, yet I feel the weight of each bolt fired. Ilias watched her, understanding deeper than words. War is never tidy, Anya, but sometimes you need a hammer blow to end the threat. You gave those people on Helios a chance to live. Her lips curved into a wan smile. And yet, for every life we saved, how many more will the Shikara snuff out before we find them again? They have shown they can strike back. We cannot rest on this victory. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this. The Alliance stands with you. Reyes finally let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. All right, let's summon the fleet commanders. We plan our next move at dawn. Below them, the bridge blinking back to life. Below them, the war continued. And above them, the stars held silent vigil witness to the wrath the USS Blackstar had unleashed. And to the saga, yet unwritten in the endless black, asterisk, the Blackstar's gravitic signature rippled across the void as she slipped back into normal space, emerging into orbit around Azaka Prime. The planet below was a churning, metallic hellscape, its surface etched with canals of molten ferrite, its atmosphere heavy with drifting clouds of ionized slag. All that remained visible of Azaka Prime's original visage were the immense arcologies carved straight into the crust, their spiked silhouettes glowing with the relentless hum of cybernetic forges. On the bridge, Captain Anya Reyes stood rigid, beside the tactical hala table. Around her, officers exchanged tense glances as sensor data painted a picture of the Dominion's final stronghold. Orbital defenses green across all sectors, Lieutenant Commander Sylvia Chon reported. Her fingers traced the hotspots of energy flares, magnetic turret arrays, firing intermittent volleys, gravitic mines drifting like silent predators, and the telltale shimmering of planetary shields riding solar winds. They've armored every vector. Recommended approach: target the shield generators first, then clear orbital lanes for ground pounder sorties. Reyes considered the readouts. Agreed. Dr. Hone synchronized the Omega beam calibration to bypass shield harmonics. I want a clean shot at those generators. Dr. Lei Hun, pale and intense, tapped her datapad. The axis of the generators lies 23 degrees off the planetary equator. I'll need to adjust our firing solution by 2.7 degrees port and elevate by 1.4. Energy bleed off should be minimal if we fire in under a second. Make it so, Reyes said. Once the shields collapse, we'll drop strike crafts to neutralize the ground-based batteries. Commander Ilias, coordinate with Major Keegan's Marine Battalion for a planetary insertion. We take Azaka Prime from the inside out. Commander Ismail Ilyas Rahim nodded. Understood, Captain. I'll establish a secure comlink with the 5th Marine Expeditionary. Below decks, Chief Engineer Rowan Malik bristled with anticipation. If the Omega beam succeeded, it would mark the first offensive use of their most terrifying experimental weapon. But lingering in his mind was a cautionary memory. During its final test, the beam had nearly fractured the Blackstar's own hull when the containment coils vibrated out of phase. Malik silently prayed he'd engineered out every last resonant risk. Breaching the shield moments later, the Blackstar lifted from orbit, gravitic thrusters roaring against the planet's thin, toxic air. The ship's bow swung into alignment, quantum railguns bristling alongside the dorsal Omega emitter. Down in the gun bays, weapons officers sealed their visors and initiated their power circuits. Omega beam primed, Dr. Hun announced. From the science station, where she'd taken up a perch beside Chun. Calibrations are locked. Shields should drop in T-minus 6 seconds. Firewall breach volley on my mark, Reyes ordered. The bridge went silent. 5, 4. A hush fell over the deck plates as the Omega emitter's crystalline lenses glowed violet-white. On the holo display, the shield generators shimmered a lattice of energy arcs, dancing in defiance. Mark, in the next heartbeat, an impossible column of braided photons burst forth, lancing through space and cleaving the shield generator's dome like a surgeon's needle. The lattice collapsed in upon itself, molten conduits short-circuited, and the planetary shield sputtered into helpless silence. A roar of triumph swept the bridge. Shields down. Shields down. Calder's voice crackled over the cum. From his Avenger interceptor, primed for strafing runs. Reyes allowed herself a nod. Excellent work. All batteries, fire on the orbital turrets. Hangar wings, prepare for drop. Marines, stand by for deployment. Descent into the forge under. The cover of the Blackstar's concentrated bombardment, dropships descended through swirls of ash and scalding debris. Major Tristan Keegan's 5th Marine Expeditionary disembarked onto the ash-pocked surface. their powered armor hissing with coolant as mag rifles clicked ready. Behind them, Titan carrier transports disgorged squads of hover APCs, spider drones, and field med teams. Keegan took point, his scarred face illuminated by the dull glow of molten slag. "Secure the landing zone," he barked into his comcaller. "We move to waypoint Alpha Control Tower 3. Command Nexus should be right below us." The ground quaked beneath them as orbital bombardment smashed incoming reinforcements. Shia Kara cyborg troopers, half-living, half-machine monstrosities, crawled from tunneled bunkers, their optics snapping into focus. They unleashed a fusillade of plasma fire, sizzling across the blackened ground. Lieutenant Seraphine Cruz, embedded with the Marines, crouched behind a ruined spire. "We need cover fire," she shouted. Across the dusty plain, Avenger interceptors dove in for strafing runs, their pulse cannons painting plasma trails across cyborg ranks. Keegan gestured. "Flank am. Drones, deploy smoke-damp pods. Let's move." Gas canisters hissed open, and the air flooded with ionized vapor. Marines surged forward, mag rifles spitting controlled bursts that shredded cybernetic limbs. Cruz's eyes glinted with grim satisfaction as she lobbed an EMP grenade into a cluster of troopers, frying their neural implants an incendiary. Orcs. In orbit, the Blackstar held station above the war zone, its decks trembling every time the gravimetric coils adjusted position. Commander Ilias monitored orbital assets. "Captain, we've intercepted a Dominion distress call. There. Activating the planetary core's fusion stabilizers to trigger a cataclysmic eruption if we breach the Nexus." Race's jaw clenched. "Then we hurry. Chun, prep the secondary arrays for underground tunneling. They'll cut through the crust." Dr. Hen's eyes widened. "You mean nano-plasma drills?" "Captain, that'll take minutes to charge." "Do it," Reyes snapped. "We don't have minutes." Into the Nexus below the cratered surface, Marines advanced through corridors of twisted metal and dripping coolant. Blood-red warning lights flashed as automated turrets melded with the walls. The air was thick with the stench of ozone and burning flesh. Drone swarms perched on ceiling rails, awaiting orders. At the front, Sergeant Nader Said led a fire team through a bulkhead breach. His voice was a calm anchor. "Team A, left flank. Team B, right. Stay tight." Momentarily united by purpose, the team swept through the Nexus's lower ring data conduits, snaked across the ceiling like malignant vines, their surfaces pulsing with crimson data streams. Said's team detonated thermal charges on the outer door to the central chamber, and the bulkhead groaned before splitting into molten slag. Inside lay the heart of the Dominion's control, a spherical reactor core thrumming with lethal energy, encased in a lattice of hardened durasteel. Around it hovered biocyber interfaces, humanoid husks wired into crystalline data nodes, their faces frozen in mechanical rictus. Major Keegan's voice crackled. "Controlled burn or we risk." A cascade. He gestured to the flamethrowers lined up behind. "Torch it." A gout of phosphor plasma ignited, bathing the room in hellish light. The reactor shrieked under the thermal assault as interface bodies burst apart. Sirens wailed. In the control balconies above, cyber-augmented technicians abandoned consoles in a frenzy, their mechanical arms syncing alarms to every station. Back on the surface, the Earth trembled. "Captain, seismic sensors registering a 20-kiloton reaction," Ilias warned. "They've triggered the core failsafe." Reyes didn't hesitate. "Chun, cut power to the drilling arrays." "Malik, divert all reactor output to the propulsion grid. Prepare for maximum impulse." The Blackstar's engines roared as if goaded by some primal need. In orbit, the ship tilted, thrusters blazing as she lunged downward. Below, the ground shattered. A pillar of molten rock and metal hurtled upward, and the Nexus chamber cavitated into a superheated crater, swallowing drones and marines alike. "Evasive Atma entry," Reyes ordered. The Blackstar's shields flared as she plunged through the storm of debris, her hull groaning under the strain. On the bridge, every console flickered. The deck plates vibrated with feedback from the imploding planet. Chang shouted over the alarm sirens. Readouts maxing reactor output at 98%. Hull integrity at 72%. Reyes' eyes were steely. Hold her together. Just a little longer. The planet's last breath, with a final agonized howl, Azakar Prime's surface ruptured. Magma and shattered crust burled into space, forming a titanium oxide ring around the dying world. The planetary core collapsed inward, and the remains of the Dominion's Nexus imploded in a kernel of superheated plasma. In the aftermath, the Blackstar limped clear of the blast radius, shield shimmering from the shockwave. The viewports glowed orange with reflected fire as the orbiting debris field coalesced into silent fragments. Below, the 5th Marine Battalion regrouped on a makeshift platform, survivors, battered and bloodied, but alive. Major Keegan saluted the Blackstar's battered silhouette. "We held the line, Captain." Reyes exhaled, closing her eyes against the memory of the Nexus's fiery end. "You did more than hold the line, Major. You broke their backbone." Commander Ilias joined her on the bridge. "Casualties are 23%. We lost good people today." Reyes nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "And we'll carry their sacrifice forward. Report to the fleet. Azakar Prime is neutralized. The Dominion's command nexus is gone." "Message sent," Ilias confirmed. On the holotable, the war map shifted. A red node marking Azakar Prime blinked once, then vanished. No more targets remained. The Shai-Kara Empire lay in ruins. But as silence reclaimed the Blackstar's bridge, Anya Reyes felt only the hollow echo of victory. Shadow of the heart of darkness. They had unleashed a force more terrible than any blade. And in the emptiness it left behind, she wondered what kind of future could be built on the ashes of an entire world. The USS Blackstar drifted among the dying embers of Azakar Prime, unchallenged, unbowed, and utterly transformed by the wrath. It had unleashed Asterisk. A pale dawn light crept across the bridge's viewport as the USS Blackstar coasted out of slipstream into Solarian space. From here, the galaxy seemed tranquil, countless pinpricks of light, drifting in velvet black. Yet within those lights lay worlds scarred by the wrath the Blackstar had unleashed. Captain Anya Reyes stood at the aft rail, shoulders squared but eyes heavy. Around her, the bridge crew moved with the quiet efficiency born of hard-won experience. Engineers monitoring reactor flux, tactical officers running recon sweeps, and communicators decoding incoming transmissions. None spoke. Each bore the unspoken truth that their triumph had carried a weight no metal could ease. Homecoming and reckoning, half the fleet had mustered to greet them. Cruisers bristling with saluting pistons, frigates rolling out banners of victory, and hospital ships drifting in silent vigil. Yet even as the Blackstar slipped into formation, a ripple of disquiet ran through Captain Reyes. The lauded hero of Helios and Azakar Prime felt more like a harbinger of ruin. In the flagship's grand wardroom, Admiral Kessler awaited her. The room was vast, its crystalline windows framing the birth of a new star cluster, an ironic symbol of hope. Yet the Admiral's gaunt face betrayed exhaustion, his uniform crisp but unadorned by the usual ribbons of triumph. "Welcome home, Captain," Kessler intoned, voice as measured as gravimetric coils. "The Alliance owes you its deepest gratitude." Reyes inclined her head. "Thank you, sir, but we have cost more than we saved." The Admiral studied her. "Casualties are low by conventional standards. Our ships sustained minimal damage." and civilian losses were negligible after you broke the blockade. He paused, eyes flicking to the holotable where civilian relief relays flickered. Still, I understand your burden. She let her gaze linger on the planet icon of Azakar. Prime, now marked neutralized. When we dropped the orbital strike, the core detonation raised miles of surface. The marine insertion lost almost a quarter of its forces, and the entire civilization of Shai-Kara Cyborg and organic alike lies in ashes. We had no choice, Kessler replied quietly. The Dominion exploited countless lives. They would not have ceased, not until every free world bowed or broke. You offered them a single decisive blow. Reyes closed her eyes against the memory of flame blasted corridors and the anguished faces of surviving Marines. A single decisive blow leaves more questions than answers. Echoes of conscience word of the Blackstar's deeds spread faster than any official communique. Holostream networks buzzed with images of charging railgun slugs, pillars of violet light bursting through planetary shields, and the Martian-born voice of Captain Reyes issuing commands in the heat of battle. Public sentiment oscillated between euphoric relief and uneasy awe. How could such power be wielded without fear? In quarters low in the ship, Lieutenant Rena Volkov paced outside the infirmary. Through the window, she saw wounded pilots awaiting med-droid treatment, shuttles torn apart, limbs repaired with synthetic grafts, eyes dimmed by trauma. Volkov swallowed, remembering how she'd heard the particulate hiss over combs when the Omega beam splintered the shield generators. "Lord, forgive us," she whispered, fingers brushing the window frame. Across the corridor, Chief Engineer Rowan Malik repaired a fractured coolant manifold. Sparks flew as his welding beam coaxed jagged edges back into place. His colleague, L.T. Jocks Calder, hovered nearby, one arm armored in a stabilizing brace. They exchanged a look that carried their shared secret. Victory had felt like survival, and survival had demanded surrendering innocence in equal measure. A council of futures. The Alliance High Council convened days later in the marble-lined halls of Solis Station. Holographic projectors displayed the scorched bits of Shai-Kara space, while delegates from allied systems watched in stony silence. When Captain Reyes entered, all eyes turned, some out of respect, others suspicion. Senator Marisol Fane of Vega Prime rose first. Her silver hair and sharp features bespoke a lifetime of negotiation. "Captain, your actions have saved countless lives, yet these are not actions taken lightly. How does the Alliance intend to govern the power embodied by the Blackstar?" Reyes met her gaze with caution. The Blackstar was built to restore balance when diplomacy fails. It has no standing orders beyond defense of the Alliance. I recommend strict limits on its deployment council approval for any future engagement. A murmur rose. Ambassador Ryu of Orion Nebula, his cloak embroidered with nebular filaments, asked, "And the Shai-Kara survivors, those who were not cyber-converted, who fought for their homes, what of them?" Reyes drew a shaky breath. "We offered evacuation to non-combatants on Helios and intercepted planetary transmission channels urging citizens to lay down arms. On Azakar, the core blast preempted any such mercy. That failure falls on my command. I accept responsibility." Thane's eyes softened. "Responsibility is a heavy burden, Captain. Yet you carry it with honor." She tapped the holo controls, pulling up a new directive. "I move that the Blackstar be placed under joint oversight, a tricameral command structure with representatives from the Council, the Fleet, and civilian affairs. Its power must be balanced by accountability." Voices echoed agreement. At last, Reyes felt her shoulders relax. "So be it," she said, voice firm. The long road ahead back on the Blackstar, the crew gathered on the upper observation deck for one final assembly. Service drones formed a near-perfect circle, their halogen lights casting soft patterns on the deck. Captain Reyes stepped forward. "None of us chose this war," she began, eyes scanning faces illuminated by nebular luminescence. "But we answered when the universe could no longer wait. We have won battles against an empire built on cruelty and conquest, but at great cost. Our duty now is to ensure our victory becomes a foundation for peace, not a pretext for more war." A silence followed, broken by Admiral Kessler's measured clap. "Well said, Captain." Reyes turned to the crew. "Tomorrow, we set course for Solus Station. There we will help shape the new order we fought to defend. Rest tonight, for the world must see not only our power, but also our compassion." As the officers and crew dispersed, Lieutenant Calder lingered. "Captain Serafine and I were talking. After all this, some of us want to do more than just fight. We want to rebuild, help survivors. Maybe journey beyond the known frontier, map new worlds, find what's left of hope out there." Reyes placed a hand on his armored shoulder. "That's the spirit that will carry us forward. The galaxy is vast, and its true frontier lies not in the darkness, but in the lives we touch." Below them, the Blackstar's engines thrummed, a promise of both power and restraint. In the star-speckled silence, Anya Reyes allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. The price of victory had been steep, but the cost of failing to strive for peace would have been far greater. The USS Blackstar entered the annals of legend as the ship that turned the tide of war, but its true legacy would be measured by the peace it helped forge in the ashes of its wrath.